Hello and welcome to Daily Prelims Practice. Here we take up MCQs based on important articles and news from the Hindu and the Indian Express newspaper. Topics that we are going to discuss today are displayed on your screen. Let's begin the discussion. Let's start our session with our first question, which is based on this editorial from the Hindu newspaper. This editorial is about the importance of loss and damage fund. Now, as you can see, important initiatives related to environment is one of the recurring theme in UPSC Prelims examination, which can be seen from this question which came in year 2017 based on Global Climate Change Alliance. Now, let's come to the practice question. Here you have to find out the correct statements with reference to the loss and damages fund. The first statement is, it was established in 1994 during UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now, as you know, UN Framework Convention on Climate Change 1994 acknowledges the differentiated responsibility of nations. That means it makes it clear that rich countries must provide both the finance and the technology to developing nations to help tackle climate change. However, UN Framework Convention on Climate Change does not mention loss and damage. So with this, our first statement is incorrect. Recently, COP27 established Loss and Damages Fund to compensate the most vulnerable developing countries that are already bearing the brunt of climate change linked natural disasters. Now, what is loss and damages? It basically refers to impacts of climate change that cannot be avoided either by mitigation, that means cutting greenhouse gas emissions, or by adaptation, that means modifying practices to buffer against climate change impacts. So they also include not only economic damage to property but also loss of livelihoods and the destruction of biodiversity that have cultural importance. So basically, this broadens the scope for affected nations to claim compensation. Now, let's come to the second statement. The monetary compensation from the Loss and Damages Fund has been increased to $100 billion recently. Now, again, this statement is incorrect. Why? Because crucial questions such as who will manage this fund, whether contributions are expected from large developing countries, and what the fair share of contributors will be, these all have been left to a transitional committee, and that will make recommendations for the adaptation of the fund at the next COP of the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, and that to be held in UAE in 2023. So both these statements are incorrect. So our correct answer of this question is D. Neither 1 nor 2. Answer of this PYQ is option A, that is 1 and 2 only. Now our next question is based on this article from the Hindu. This article is about great knot, a migratory bird that has been found its way to Kerala's coast, flying over 9,000 km for a winter sojourn. Now, as you know, important species discovery, species sighted or species extent is one of the important theme for your UPSC prelims examination. For example, this question based on the same came in year 2020. Now let's come to the practice question. Here you have to find out the correct statements with reference to the great knot. The first statement is, it is a migratory wading bird endemic to Iberian Peninsula. Now before answering this question, let me brief you about what is great knot. It is a medium-sized shorebird and also international migratory wading bird from Russia. So with this, our first statement is incorrect. This bird is from Russia, not from Iberian Peninsula, and that travels vast distances between the northern hemisphere breeding grounds and southern hemisphere summer feeding grounds. These long distance migrants starting from Kamchatka Peninsula, then they stay at Yellow Sea and Thailand in Southeast Asia before proceeding to their southerly winter grounds including peninsular India. Recently, Many juvenile great knots have been tagged with Moskva rings that you can see here in the Kamchatka Peninsula in eastern Russia. Now let's come to the second statement. It is listed as vulnerable in the IUCN Red List of threatened species. Again, this statement is wrong because it is listed as endangered in IUCN Red List of threatened species. So with this, our correct answer is option D, neither 1 nor 2. Answer of this PYQ is option A, that is birds. Now our next question is based on this article from the Hindu newspaper. This article is about a PIL that has been filed before the Calcutta High Court seeking direction to the centre to take steps to stop films and various media that use distorted facts about lives and achievements of national heroes, especially Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. Now, as you know, question based on important personality with respect to freedom struggle is important for your prelims examination, and this can be seen from this question about freedom fighters which came in year 2022. Now let's come to the practice question. With reference to Subhash Chandra Bose, consider the following statements. The first statement is he became the president of Indian National Congress in 1939 at Tripuri session for the first time. That Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose was an Indian nationalist who participated in the Indian national movement. He cleared ICS and later joined Indian national movement in 1921. And Bose became the president of INC in 1938 at Haripura session for the first time, and he re-elected for the president of INC in 1939 at Tripuri session. So with this, our first statement is incorrect. Now next statement is Azad Hind Radio was started under the leadership of Bose in Germany. Now this statement is correct as Azad Hind Radio was started under the leadership of Bose in Germany in 1942 to encourage Indians to fight for Axis powers, that is Germany, Italy and Japan. He also set up Free India Center in Berlin. Now let's come to the third statement. He opposed the non-cooperation movement. Now again this statement is incorrect because he supported non-cooperation movement led by Mahatma Gandhi and actively participated in Salt Satyagraha of 1930. So with this, our correct answer is option C, 1 and 3 only. Answer of this PYQ is option D, that is 3 only. Moving on to the next question, which is based on this article from the Hindu newspaper. According to this article, lawyers protest over the reported transfer of two Gujarat and Telangana High Court judges that may have brought the judiciary and the government closer on the need to protect the sanctity of the Supreme Court. Now, as you know, structure, organization, and functioning of the judiciary is important for your prelims examination. For example, this question about the judiciary came in year 2019. Now, let's come to the practice question. Here, you have to find out the incorrect statements. The first one is the Chief Justice of a High Court can request a retired judge to act as a judge of the High Court with prior consent of the governor. Now, according to Article 224A, the Chief Justice of a High Court of a state can request a retired judge of that High Court or any other High Court to act as judge of the High Court of that state for a temporary period. He can do so only with the previous consent of the president and not the governor. So with this, our first statement is incorrect. Now let's come to the second statement. The retired permanent judges of a high court are prohibited from pleading or acting in any court in India. So to answer this, one must know that Constitution has made certain provisions to safeguard and ensure the independent and impartial functioning of a high court as per Article 220. According to this, the retired permanent judges of a high court are prohibited from pleading or acting in any court or before any authority in India except the Supreme Court and the other high courts. So with this, our second statement is incorrect. Now let's come to the third statement. The President can appoint duly qualified persons as additional judges of a High Court for a temporary period not exceeding 2 years. Now, according to Article 224, the President can appoint duly qualified persons as additional judges of a High Court for a temporary period not exceeding 2 years. So, with this, our third statement is correct. Also, under two conditions, the President can appoint duly qualified persons as additional judges. First is if there is a temporary increase in the business of the High Court, and second is if there are arrears of work in the High Court. So, with this, our correct answer is option A, that is 1 and 2 only. Answer of this PYQ is option D, neither 1 nor 2. Our next question is based on this article from the Indian Express, and according to this article, author has given a multi-pronged action plan inclusive of legal, governance and HR reforms which are required to reform alternative dispute mechanism. Now, as you know, alternative judicial system is important for your prelims as well as for your mains examination. Like this question based on Gram Nyayalaya Act came in year 2016, and this is statutory bodies related to alternative dispute resolution. Now let's come to the practice question. Here you have to identify incorrect statements regarding permanent Lok Adalats. The first statement is only a serving or a retired judge of a high court can become chairman of permanent Lok Adalats. Now to answer this, one must know that Legal Services Authorities Act 1987 was amended in 2002 to provide for the establishment of permanent Lok Adalats to deal with cases pertaining to the public utility services. Now, the permanent Lok Adalat shall consist of chairman who is or has been a district judge or additional district judge or has held judicial office higher in rank than that of the district judge, and two other persons having adequate experience in public utility services. So with this, our first statement is incorrect. Now let's come to the second statement. The pecuniary jurisdiction of the permanent Lok Adalat is fixed and shall be up to rupees 5 lakh. Now this statement is incorrect because pecuniary jurisdiction of the permanent Lok Adalat shall be up to rupees 10 lakh. However, the central government may increase the said pecuniary jurisdiction from time to time. Now let's come to the third statement. The permanent Lok Adalat shall have jurisdiction in respect of matters related to both compoundable and non-compoundable laws. Now to answer this, you should know what is compoundable and non-compoundable laws. Compoundable offences are those offences where the complainant or the person who has filed the case enters into a compromise and agrees to have the charge dropped against the accused. For example, criminal breach of contract of service. And what is non-compoundable? These are offences which cannot be compounded. That is, they can only be quashed. The reason for this is because the nature of the offence is so grave and criminal that the accused cannot be allowed to go scot-free. For example, voluntarily causing hurt by dangerous weapons or means. So here, the permanent Lok Adalat shall have no jurisdiction in respect of any matter relating to an offence not compoundable under any law. So with this, our third statement is incorrect. So here, our correct answer is option D, that is 1, 2 and 3. Answer of this PYQ is option B, that is 2 only. Now our next question is based on this article from the Indian Express. According to this article, in the past 5 years, rupees 10 lakh crore in write-off have aided banks to reduce their non-performing assets by half. Now, to understand what is write-off and what is NPA, let's see a practice question. Now, as you know, Indian financial system is important for your UPSC Prelims examination. For example, question based on Scheme for Sustainable Structuring of Stressed Assets, that is S4A, came in year 2017. Now let's come to the practice question. Here you have to identify the correct statements. The first one is A loan becomes an NPA, that is non-performing assets, when the principal or interest payments remains overdue for 90 days. This statement is correct as a loan becomes an NPA when the principal or interest payments remains overdue for 90 days. Further classification of NPA is that when the NPAs have aged less than or equal to 12 months, it is known as substandard asset. When the NPA have aged greater than 12 months, then that is doubtful assets. Now, the third one is loss assets, which is when the bank or its auditors have identified the loss but it has not been written off. Now let's come to the second statement. Banks have been able to recover majority of loans that were written off in last decade. Now this statement is incorrect because banks have been able to recover only 13% of loans that were written off in last decade. Now let's come to the third statement. After the loans are written off, they are categorized as loss. Now this statement is correct because after the loans are written off, they are categorized as loss. Further, it helps the bank reduce not only NPAs but also taxes since the written off amount is allowed to be deducted from the profit before tax. So with this, our correct answer is option C, that is 1 and 3 only. Answer of this PYQ is option B. That's all for today. Stay tuned for more such updates.